The morning that I was to run my world record, I was actually thinking about treating the Polytechnic race as a training run. As you recall, I had just finished running the Greek Marathon a few weeks before, and I honestly didn't feel I had adequately recovered. Therefore, I thought, why not treat this as a training run? Also, I was hoping that I would be able to meet the Queen as well. That morning, I went out and got my mail, and I noticed there was a letter from Fred Wilt. I opened the letter and read the letter, and at the bottom, Fred had written this quote to me. I don't know at the time how much it inspired me, but reflecting, I'm sure it was in part responsible for the world record that day. As I read this quote over and over again over the years, it has continued to inspire me, not only in races but in running through life. I would therefore like to share this quotation with you this evening as I close out my presentation. In every race, there comes a crucial point when victory hangs in the balance. At that instant, no matter how cleverly he has been coached, the issue of victory or defeat passes entirely to the athlete. Only then do the athlete's powers of physical and mental courage, willpower, tenacity, and competitive desire stand naked and exposed in a moment of truth which cannot be denied. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. Okay, go ahead.
What, in your estimation, was one of your finer races? Do you think your world record, the day you broke the world record or set the world record, was one of your key races?
I have sort of mixed feelings on that, Bob. I guess I'd have to say definitely yes, because it was a world record. A race that I'm going to describe to you a little bit later, the Olympic trials, the National AAU Marathon, which served as one of the two Olympic trials in Yonkers, New York, was probably a close second because of the inclement weather conditions that day and the hilly course. My time at that particular race, according to the marathon experts at the time, they maintained that would have probably been a world record in itself, but that's pure, conjecture. I would have to say, I guess, the world record, very definitely, the Polytechnic, the second time I ran the Polytechnic Marathon, 1963.
Okay, that was in London, right?
Well, it wasn't in London, it was near London, yes. The race, as you recall, as I indicated to you earlier, my very first marathon was the Polytechnic. It ran from Windsor Castle, which is the residence of Her Majesty the Queen, to town of Chiswick, some 26 miles away. And as you recall, I finished a tired ninth in that first race, and that's when I swore I'd never run another one. But I decided in June of 1963, since I was living in England and the race was just a mere couple of hours from where I lived, that I'd give it another shot. I was told by a lot of the marathoners at the time that I was somewhat foolish to try to attempt to run a marathon, since I had run the Greek race, as you recall, about 3 weeks prior to that, and most of the marathoners felt that a marathon runner probably needed a minimum of a month to recover. I was anxious to meet the Queen again. I thought maybe I could get a few pictures taken of Her Majesty and myself, and I thought, well, why not treat it as a training run? So I decided to go ahead and run it. Excuse me. So I was completely relaxed. I really wasn't very nervous at all, and in fact, I was joking around, before the race with Ron Hill and some of the other marathoners, and Ron, I recall, asked me what kind of a time I thought I was going to run, and I said, Ron, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm just treating this as a training run. I just came off the Greek marathon 3 weeks before, and I remember him saying, you're going to run another marathon in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks? And I said, well, give it a shot. I'll just treat it as a training run. So I had no idea what was forthcoming that day. I recall the weather conditions were absolutely perfect, somewhere around 70 degrees, overcast skies, so we didn't have to worry about the sun. And we started the race. The Queen, incidentally, did not start the race that day, which was kind of a disappointment, but nevertheless, I felt good, I felt rested, and I ran with Ron Hill, I think, for up to about 8 or 10 miles. And I recall that he was chatting to me, I think his wife had just had a baby at the time, and he was joking along, and I recall thinking at the time, I think you'd be better off, mate, just keeping your mouth shut and saving your energy. But I did remember that first 10 miles I was running with a what Fred Wilt used to call a tremendous mechanical efficiency. And about the time I reached the 10-mile mark, I started putting on the pressure, and Ron, of course, hung with me, and we had gone up to the front, and we were leading the race, as I remember. And we stayed together till about 13, 14 miles, and I thought, you know, at 15 miles, if I'm feeling as good as I am right now, I'm going to start a sustained kick. The last 10 miles, you know, that's how good I felt. I just felt just tremendous. So about 15 miles, I think he was still talking to me occasionally, although not quite as frequently as he did in the first 5 miles of the race. And so I started putting on the pressure at about 15 miles. He stayed with me for a few miles, and I noticed he was laboring, you know, much harder than he usually had done in races before. And I'd run against Ron a number of times in cross-country races, road races, and the like. And finally, about, I guess it must have been about 17, 18 miles, I saw him start to drop back, and I thought, my God, I've got him. And so I really started to put on the pressure. And I kept looking over my shoulder, and I could see him falling further and further behind, and he had this pained expression on his face. And I remember getting that really surge of adrenaline in me, thinking, my God, I've broken. Well, you know, and I knew how good I felt, and I could imagine how bad he felt, judging from the way he was laboring and the expression on his face. And so I continued to put on the pressure and put on the pressure, and of course there were all kinds of spectators encouraging me. And along about the 20-mile mark, which is the wall, a coin I termed incidentally, I didn't feel the effects of the wall. It wasn't there for the first time in all the races I had run, and I kept thinking, when is it going to hit me? When is it going to hit me? And it didn't. And there was one of the coaches, I can't remember his name, on the sidelines, shouted to me, Buddy, you've got the course record. Keep the pace. Keep the pace. You've got the course record. I thought, my God, I'm going to have the course record. An American setting the course record in the poly. Of course, then I got another surge of adrenaline. And at about 23, 22 miles, I was really starting to feel it. And that was my wall on that particular day. And it hit me. But even then, I was still able to move much more smoothly than I had in any previous marathons. And of course, they kept saying, you got the course record, you got the course record. At no time did anybody make any mention of the world record. And I continued on, and at about the same pace the last 2 or 3 miles. And the race, the last quarter mile of the race was on a track. We came in through these gates, entered the track, and then ran one complete lap on the track to the finish. And I recall, if I remember correctly, I think my last quarter mile in that race was somewhere around 65 seconds, which is just, you know, it really is pretty phenomenal, you know, considering the end of 26 miles. Now, I'm not exactly sure that time, but I remember running that last quarter, you know, faster than I've ever finished a marathon in my life. I finished the race. I was absolutely delighted. People were cheering, and I thought, I've got the course record. I've got the course record. I just want you to imagine, Bob, if you can, I took a victory lap jogging around the track, and the announcer said something like this, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the Polytechnic Marathon is Leonard Buddy Edelen from the United States of America in a new world record of 2 hours and 14 minutes and 28 seconds. It's hard, I guess, maybe for you to imagine the feeling. I was absolutely numb, in a state of shock, an absolute state of shock, completely oblivious of any kind of environmental stimuli. I just cannot describe it. I could not believe it. And I ran over to one of the officials and I said, what's the real time? I mean, is it really 2:14:28, you know? It's a new world record, you know? And I just couldn't believe it. I just kept asking people. And that, I guess, has to be one of my biggest thrills in my life. Maybe second only to meeting the Queen, although I think that's one step ahead of meeting the Queen.